You're listening to Left at the Valley 2.0, Atheist, Skeptic, and Humanist Radio.
Hi, I'm Tom.
And I'm Cecil from Cognitive Dissonance.
And we took
At
the valley.
Left at the valley.
We were on sync.
I think we did it.
Did you feel that?
Was that better?
I
think it was better.
Like, you know, when you just get in that vibe?
I feel like I need to
God
burn
damn.
myself off a little.
Maybe a
Woo!
little.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah, okay.
shit.
Academy
That might be the
Award.
best tape we've ever delivered.
I'm telling you what, in the presence of masters. That's all it is.
All
In the
right,
presence.
Tom.
10,000 hours. 10,000 hours, bitches.
10,000 hours and you still won't be any better.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I found that long road. We don't wait down the holiday road. Holiday road.
Back from vacation and coming at you from a new year. This is Left of the Valley 2.0.
Season 2.
Season 2. My name is Kevin, and I postulate that atheism and theism are two sides of the same coin. One uses its head, and the other one relies on tails. Joining me as usual is the team that will point out that a pizza is round, put it into a square box, and eaten as a triangle.
Geometry.
Yeah, that's a lot of shapes.
She thinks celebrating Masturbation Month starts by giving yourself a hand. Sabrina.
That's it. Thanks.
He thinks the best. Oh, sorry. He thinks he'll tell you that a block of cheese is just a loaf of milk. Bradley.
It is, though. It really is.
It really is. Totally.
I don't know. It's different bacteria, man.
Yeah. And her friend was complaining that she never listens or something like that. Hertzie.
I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Guys, welcome back. And this show is brought to you by our patrons, including a new Patreon, Mary T. Thank you so much. It's brought to you by, if you also want to become a Patreon, go to patreon.com/LATV. Guys, welcome back. Hope you had a great holiday season.
We did.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
sort of.
We did so. It
Like
was
half,
great.
half.
As he
I,
talked away.
I apologize. I apologize during the holiday season. I actually caught Omicron, believe it or not.
You're not the only one.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I've been fighting this left, right, and center, and it's been kind of kicking my ass for a bit. So,
Yeah.
so if I sound kind of woke and all that stuff, my voice is not normal. That explains it.
That's the two of us.
Now you both have to go to Percy I-8.
Yeah,
That's
we
right.
do.
I am Lur.
That's much,
That's not bad.
not bad at all.
Second half of the show, we'll be talking to Dr. Edwin Hodge, Professor Edwin Hodge of University of Victoria. We'll be talking about
We keep
naturalized
calling
people.
him a doctor.
What?
We keep calling him a doctor.
I believe he is a doctor. He's a professor for sure. We know
Okay.
that.
But
So-
is he the doctor?
Oh,
He is
absolutely.
the doctor.
I mean, there's only
There can
one
be
doctor,
only one.
Yeah.
and that's only if you're a Whovian.
But first, let's do a chit chat. And speaking of COVID news, politicians seem to be reading the population being tired of dealing with anti-vaxxers. And politicians like conservatives Erin O'Toole here in Canada are starting to distance themselves from the wackos. Well, enter Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, the French president who doesn't have his tongue in his pocket. Will actually welcome a scheduled debate on COVID and mandated vaccinations in the French parliament.
Why?
Oh, wow.
I'm
Look,
kidding. Keep
well,
going.
you know,
I was like,
you know the
oh,
French
we're going to have
are-
to have a conversation.
Aren't you, right?
Now, if you remember, we talked on the show how in June the French actually forced the population to show they were vaccinated to access things like their favorite cafe via the vaccination passport.
Yep.
Despite much protest from the French. At this point, like much of Europe, nearly 90% of 12 years and over are vaccinated in France.
Wow.
So Macron,
Very similar to Canada, by the way.
yes, Macron at this point said he'd welcome the debate, if only to piss off the anti-vax crowd.
Nice.
Prove that it works, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny.
His opponent called his comments irresponsible. And this is despite the fact there's a presidential election this April.
Wow.
for the
Damn.
president. So that's a bold move for this guy to make, to basically say, fuck you. I don't care if you're an anti-vax. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it.
And
Jesus
in
Christ.
response to that, the opposition leaders actually forced a suspension of the debate over the new restrictions in France, which require to show proof of vaccination for things like going to the cinema, restaurants, or even take the train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, not taking the train so much, but we had to show vaccination to
Well,
fly.
yeah, exactly. So it's the same kind of restrictions we have
yeah.
up here in Canada.
And you know what? We're like 87% vaccinated over 12 years.
Yeah, something like that.
I looked up stats recently because I was arguing with someone.
Do we know the Americans?
I don't know the American stats, to be totally honest with you. I just know that Canada
There's like 5 vaccinated
is willing to get it done. But anyway, we're not going to go on that.
I don't want to know the vaccination stats in the U.S. because it's just going to depress me because I know you don't have to get proof of vaccination to get on the bus, and it's like, as one without a car, I really don't want to use the public transportation right now.
Right, I'm in the same boat. I feel you. Yeah, and it's like, at least do they require masks where you're at?
Oh yeah.
Technically, the light rail, which is the faster form of public transportation closest to me, there's not a lot of people. There's not like a bus driver who lets you on and stuff. So you can go on the train, and a lot of people will take off their mask and stuff, and it's just like, yep.
You know what? People are actually double masking here because they're recognizing that cloth masks really don't do much. So what they're doing is they're putting on the really yucky blue medical mask and then putting on a really pretty cloth mask over top.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's actually
I've started doing that.
It's being recommended here, and also N95s. I'm seeing a lot more N95s, and it's worth it. We wore one in the airport, and it wasn't that bad. I wore it for 5 hours on an airplane. I was fine.
Yeah.
And it's worth it, people. Like, let's just stop the spread. It's awful.
And I will tell you right now to our audience, retracing the steps of how I got Omicron here, and
we can't even figure it out.
we can't. You can't really know, but I'm betting that what happened is we went to Quebec City for the holidays, and on the 26th, on the Boxing Day, we essentially went down Old Quebec City, kind of like as tourists, and walked around a lot. Now we walked around with our masks on. Even though there was a fair amount of people walking around too, but because it's winter and it got so damp, at some point you're removing the mask because the mask was kind of like saturated with water vapor and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I think that's how I got it, and that's just walking around with people outside.
Yeah.
Wow. So you weren't running around just licking door handles and stuff?
No, I mean that's
Pinocchio's hand, though. Remember? Yeah, this wood statue of Pinocchio. So anyway, you never know. It could have been there, could have been the airport. There's so many places, especially because we did kind of fly into the shitstorm of COVID in Canada, but it was worth every minute of it.
The point is, don't take chances. Don't take chances. This is real. This is not a freaking Chinese host. I'm not a Chinese agent. I'm not paid by George Soros or whatever.
And I feel like crap. Okay, like
yeah, this is real.
I'm gonna be okay, but it's like a damn bad flu.
Anyway,
yeah, and the fact that that it's like a 99 survival, or dying is the worst possible scenario. You could get really hurt with long COVID and have lungs that are worse than smokers that have smoked for like 20 years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've been hacking up blood, guys. That means that my lungs have been damaged by this, and who knows, maybe permanently. I don't know. So I might be short of breath like that for us. No, not really, but at first,
no, not really. It's not a no.
I know, we're gonna talk after the show. Don't worry.
We were trying to evaluate the color, and I thought it looked more green.
He's a very healthy person.
Yeah,
he doesn't smoke. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He goes to the gym however many times a week that he's allowed. Anywhere from 3 to 7.
And just doing the intro on this show today, I was almost had to catch my breath there because I usually
he's waking me up choking at night, and I
know
was a
you're
smoker.
choking me.
Yeah. I was a smoker for like 20 plus years now. Granted, I've been a non-smoker for 10, but it's not affecting my lungs in the same way. So just know that it doesn't matter.
Don't
doesn't
play
matter
with
how. Yeah, don't play with fire. It's not
Don't
worth
play
it.
with
So
fire.
let's move on to something.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't want to get
in climate change news. We've been seeing some bad snow events recently, like the Virginia highway that was blocked and all that, and we've been seeing a lot of snowfall even here in BC, much more than usual. In Pakistan, In a popular winter resort in the town of, I'm going to massacre this, I think it's Muret, the temperature dropped to -8 Celsius, which is 17 degrees Fahrenheit. And there was a snow drop of 1.2 meters, or 1.2 yards, if you wish, which trapped thousands of vehicles to be trapped overnight and killing 22 people.
Oh
Because
my
they were
god.
buried under the snow.
Yeah. Most of them of hypothermia. 10 men, 10 children, and 2 women died of hypothermia. The military and the paramilitary forces were deployed. And by Saturday, which was yesterday as we're recording this, there was still over 1,000 cars that were trapped in the snow. Even the heavy-duty equipment brought in to clear the snow got stuck because they're not used to this kind of weather in Pakistan.
Right.
So,
even though it's a resort town, they're not used to snow.
Well,
not
it's a
that
winter
Not
resort.
this much.
Not this level of snow.
Is it like a ski resort though?
I don't know.
Anyway,
the article
it's
was
Pakistan.
insane.
I would think that Pakistan doesn't.
You
Really
think of
get
Pakistan
super cold.
as desert, desert?
Desert, yeah.
Well,
Maybe there's some
I'm sure there's some
who
good
knows?
deserts there too. Stuff like that, and a lot of heat.
Yeah.
But in the mountains, of course, they do have some snow,
Wow.
but not this level. So this is climate change happening again, guys.
Yeah, don't ignore it. We were in Quebec, like we said, and Quebec is generally like one of the coldest places in Canada. It's -15, 20. We did see -20 there once, but we're there, and it was -15 here in BC, and it was only like -3 in Quebec.
Yeah, it's
So
weird.
don't say the climate change isn't real when it's usually the opposite.
Yeah,
Right. Have y'all seen the new movie that's about climate change, sort of, the Don't Look Up?
Yes,
we
we
were
watched that
watching
yesterday. What a fantastic movie!
Oh, it was
So
great.
good.
Yeah.
Don't look up, just look down. Don't look up.
Yeah.
No, it's not there.
It's so scary to see that movie. It's
We were-
almost a documentary.
Yeah,
So
that's what we were saying.
Right.
Are you sure this is fiction? 'Cause-
I have to go check outside to see if there was actually an asteroid
yeah,
coming
look up.
down.
Is there a comet?
Is there really a comet coming down? Because it's like, holy crap!
Yeah.
It's supposed to be satire, but it's
Yeah, no,
so
it was so
silly.
close to
Social media
reality.
is so silly now. It's like, oh my god, I could foresee this happening for real.
Yep.
Oh,
me
yeah.
too.
Yep. Back to the accidents and stuff. Because I'm from Minnesota, where we have a lot of the cold weather and stuff. I really want to have more stuff out there about snow safety and cold safety and stuff, because it's hitting a lot of places that they haven't had to deal with it. And I understand that, okay, it might happen once in a while, so you don't want to invest the huge amount of infrastructure, I guess. However, there are things like car emergency kits and stuff people need to get, and what to do if you see signs of hypothermia. What are the signs of hypothermia?
Yep.
For example, do not give somebody who looks like they might be having hypothermia booze. That is the worst thing you can do.
It'll actually
Really?
drop
Oh,
your
okay.
Yes.
temperature.
Warm beverages is much better.
So that warms you up. It doesn't.
No, and honestly,
Huh.
take off your clothes and take off their clothes and lay next to them naked. It sounds
Yep.
sick and sexual, but trust me, that cold person doesn't give a shit, and they just want your body heat, and that's how you give it.
Yes. If you are in a building or something, also putting them under a blanket and then putting like a space heater blowing into the blanket can help a lot too, if you're lucky enough to be in that situation. Which
Right.
may have happened to me after a very cold day and wet boots and a 3-hour drive with no heat on my
Oh.
feet. That
Exactly.
Jeez,
The
yeah.
things you got to.
Now you can do
Have
very
fun.
many. What I've always done in my car, I've always had a wool military blanket. I went to an army surplus store. I bought this wool blanket. They were cheap, and I just put that in the back in the trunk of my car just in case. I've never really got stuck with my car to the point I had to spend the night or something like that in there. But you never know, right? Just that one blanket can make a difference.
Oh yeah, and they have like the shiny ones that basically like reflects the heat. Those are really good. If you think there might be any signs of snow, sand, non-clumping cat litter, or what's the other one? Salt, like sidewalk salt. Those are really good things to have to help you get out of a bad situation.
You don't need a lot, just a little
Nope.
bit. I have an emergency kit that I was gifted, and it sits in my trunk, and I've never had to pull anything out of it except for the shovel that it came with. And that shovel was because, I'm driving along, I stopped for gas, and I see a bunch of snow built up in the tire well. And so I was like, I'll just knock that out. Look, I have a shovel.
That is one thing I miss about not having a car is I miss going over and just kicking the snow in the tire wells. And that satisfactory thump when it falls.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. It's weird but true news. In Hamilton, Ontario, right here in Canada, residents woke up the morning of December 29th to find out it snowed the night before, but not nice, fluffy snowflakes.
Really?
It snowed soybeans.
What?
What?
Yeah, the white sprinkle left all over town was mostly soybean husks.
What?
The bean apocalypse came from a U.S.-based food processing plant in the city called Bunge. The company had no idea this happened until the residents started complaining about the mess. The company acknowledged the annoyance caused by the accidents and determined that the bean spray was as a result of a plugged dust collector. So there was actually beans all over town.
And money for all.
Exactly. And of course, people were driving all over beans and squishing the beans all over. So it's making a mess all over the place.
It's like partly sunny with chance of meatballs or whatever.
Exactly. So there was no word as we were saying this, if burrito trucks have sprouted in the area, or maybe we suggest a new mecca for vegans. I don't know. So anyway,
Yeah. That's a religion, So
people were complaining maybe you shouldn't live that close to a factory, that does beans or anything like that. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, they're always going to say, that seems to be the war cry of assholes. You should have done it. Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you lived so close to it. Fuck you. Okay, I live where I goddamn live. It's like...
Nothing sprouted out of this conversation. That's for sure.
No.
I'm trying, but this is just leaving me by the skin of my teeth.
Nice.
Oh, perfect. Moving on. Benjamin's not here today, but Sabrina's taking over for
Things that make you go.
This is actually pretty good. It should be short because I can't breathe like you, so I have to take pauses. But there's this little small town in Wales. It's called in the UK. It's called Buckley, and over Christmas time,
Is that what it made the syrup?
Maybe
The cough syrup?
it tastes interesting, but it works.
Exactly.
Anyways, so this poor little town has over Christmas time was in the grips of fear and terror. 18 of their nearly 16,000 residents were attacked in what they were calling a Christmas rampage.
A Christmas rampage.
A Christmas rampage.
In Buckley.
In Buckley.
In the UK.
Directed by Michael Bay.
So how is it that it's making here on things that make you go, is because what's been attacking these residents of Buckley, it's none other than a bloodthirsty, psycho squirrel.
He's got teeth like this.
Shut
up. It's a squirrel. It's a gray squirrel, which is actually an invasive species. So it's been indiscriminately attacking pensioners, pets, and children. It jumps at them while they're taking out the garbage, and as they're running away in fear, it's chasing after them as they run down the street.
It sounds silly when you think of a squirrel because you think of a nice fluffy animal, but these things are fast. They are fast.
This squirrel is so fearless; it's actually attacking people's pet Bengals.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like Rocky. It's like Rocky from Rocky and Bullwinkle got bit by a vampire.
Rocky pulls his rabbit out my head.
Yeah.
If it's going after Bengals, then it has no fear because those cats are. I have a cat that's part Bengal. I love him. He's the most clever fucking asshole.
Yeah, they're smart, they're fast, they're big. It's crazy. So they named the squirrel Stripe. Because he of course resembles the mean mogwai that terrorized Gizmo.
Yeah.
So he got the name Stripe.
That's right.
So some of the injuries have been just bites and bruises, and of course then people have to go and get their tetanus booster because vaccines work. So
Yeah, exactly.
anyway, There's this one woman, she's a 65-year-old woman named Corrine Reynolds. She took it upon herself to capture the vicious psycho squirrel. So she set up a live trap, and she knew which one was him because he had some fur missing on his tail. So once she trapped him, she unfortunately had to take him to the vet to be put to sleep because he is an invasive species, and so it's against the wildlife regulations to let them go. And of course, because he's an invasive species, you can't keep him as a pet either. And I'm not so sure I'd want to keep that pet squirrel.
Hell no. Jeez.
Wow.
Lose your face at night, you know?
Yeah.
Stripes, the terrifying squirrel, finally met his match with a 65-year-old woman.
65-year-old woman who said, "I'm not going to let my 2-year-old grandson run in the garden until I've got this squirrel cat."
Oh my god!
65-year-old women are terrifying.
Don't mess with grandma.
You should have up just going a rampage all over Europe.
I will completely.
That sounds like serious Grandma of the Squirrel.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was like,
I will completely believe. Oh, I was because I completely believe that this squirrel did this because the squirrels around here will come around with like these huge ass cookies, and I'm looking, going, where the fuck did you get that? Climbing by my second floor window.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first years I moved here to BC. I was living with my brother, and we were in an apartment on the ground floor. And there was a squirrel that came to our place, and we named him Bob. And that squirrel was bold enough; he would just get on the screen door and shake the screen door till we opened it, and then he would come into the apartment and jump onto the counter to get a peanut out of a bowl and run away. And he would do that like on a regular basis, and like every second day or so.
Wow.
You know,
he's fucking smart.
He's on the counter, and all of a sudden you hear these rattling. What the hell is that? And you're looking on the screen door. There's Bob the squirrel shaking the screen door.
Like, hey, it's peanut time. Hello.
Yeah.
you know,
Let me in before I wreck your face. You know,
Bob had you trained well, Kevin.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, it worked. It
worked. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Mighty Hertzy, you got a biggest be crazy kind of thing?
Oh, Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah, it's there.
I love that song.
Oh, me too.
So today's Schadenfreude is Majority Taylor Green, MTG, but not the game, which is definitely better.
I'm glad you specified.
Oh, yes. I am that geeky. But yes, she has lost her personal Twitter.
Oh.
Now, one would think this might be from the litany of racism that she puts on there, or the calls for basically more insurrection. Yeah. Alas, it was just because of the COVID denialism and misinformation.
Good.
So at least it's something. She still has her professional Twitter, which does bring into question whether or not she will be able to do the same thing with that. Yeah. And will Twitter allow it? Because usually that's used as a vehicle to talk to people and such, which also brings in the question, can she block people who are her constituents?
Oh, right. Because that's
if anybody lives in that area.
Okay.
Let's go join. Oh.
No, we're my constituents.
Yes.
Did she know different?
You know, probably not. I'm just gonna say. But yeah, so there's that. And then also I'd like to celebrate the 1 year of the January 6th insurrection that failed. Now, granted, I still hold that this potentially could be the beer hall situation of the US. However, the factor that it did fail, and major props to the Capitol Police for the stuff that they did and such, and sacrifices they made for that, to make sure that that was a Schadenfreude that we will still laugh at, and I will laugh at for the rest of my goddamn life.
Hell yeah.
No, I know people are going to court now and like getting convicted and all that. So at what point are we gonna like arrest Trump for his part and where he sat in front of the TV and rewound and
because he watched
and went like this, look what they're doing. And did anything to stop it.
Who's the Attorney General? Crap, I just had that name in my head.
Barr was when he was
Bob.
now it's
Merrick Garland. There we
Oh,
go.
Merrick Garland, yeah.
Yeah, Merrick Garland actually went on
Well,
a
Canadian beauty answered that.
Yeah,
the
well,
American
the
Attorney
Canadian who
General.
watches way too much U.S. politics.
Merrick Garland did a press conference not that long ago, and while technically he cannot say whether something is or is not happening because it is an ongoing investigation, he alluded as much as he could that this is still ongoing. They are not finished, and they are going to be going after all of the organizers, whether they were there or not.
Wow.
So
That's huge.
I've got a favor to ask people out there. Sabrina and I discuss this on a regular basis. Stop calling it a riot.
Yeah, it's not a riot.
It's not a
it's
riot.
not a riot. It's a coup. It's an
said-
insurrection.
From
Yeah,
the point of view of the idiot that was there, that was just being manipulated to just smash windows, sure, maybe it was a riot. But you know what? The whole story as a whole, no, this was a coup attempt.
Yes.
It was a political coup attempt.
And I said it at the beginning that the media is going to immediately whitewash this and try and make it something that it wasn't. They're going to gaslight us into believing that it was just a bunch of idiots who went to start a riot. But let's not, because that's not what it was. They went there thinking that they were going to be able to hang Mike Pence and turn it into Trump being back in office for 4 years. Some strange thing that I don't know how they believed it, but they truly did.
Yeah, these people were calling 1776 part 2. You know, like, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
You think it was a riot back then too? No, it was a revolution. You know, there's a freaking difference.
I mean, I was talking to my family about it at the one point, and I was like, you know, they said they were going to murder the politicians. You know, like they were like, they're not going to murder politicians. Like they brought fucking gallows, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
They brought gallows
and guns.
and guns.
Where people
and
weren't
pipe bombs.
shot.
Yeah, and as someone who is pretty much from cities that have had a few things that people have talked about as riots, despite the fact that I would argue that they were still protests. No, not a riot.
No,
it's a coup.
Yeah, it failed, but it was a coup.
Definitely. Coups can fail, lo and behold. Doesn't have to succeed to be a coup.
Thank goodness.
We went to the Citadel while we were in Quebec City, and we talked about how the U.S. tried to have a little coup on us, and yeah, there's a reason why we're Canada. And the Citadel had a lot to do with it.
Anyway,
that's
history.
I like history. We need to teach them that because you know what? Most Americans don't know we burnt down their White House.
Hey,
Battle of 1812.
Don't blame me for that one. Don't blame me for that one.
We're still British.
Well, anyway, we're way off subject here.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about
you're right, and I sure hope that Twitter and more social media platforms are more proactive to ban.
I would love to see a lot of that.
And yes, because you know what, and I know a lot of people will come in and say, "Oh, free speech is this, free speech that," and that's perfectly fine. But when you free speech amendment, that's the government stopping you from saying things. Twitter is a private entity.
Yep.
Twitter is not part of the government. If Twitter doesn't want you to say something on their platform, that's their right.
Yep.
And it's not stopping your free speech. Not at all.
Not even a little bit.
If you said something like you were arrested in the States by the government for saying, you don't like Brent Lee or something like that, that would be stifling your free speech. But that's not the case. So stop, making a big mountain out of a molehill. That's not what's happening here at all. And I sure hope more platforms will start following that kind of example.
They really are. I think that there's been so much pressure from media and from the people that they need to be quieted because it's causing true harm. And eventually these private businesses are like, well, shit, at what point are we going to be held liable? And what's it going to cost us when we are found liable?
Yeah.
And so what's a better, an easier and a cheaper way to handle this is to ban the people that are opening us up to these probably potentially $1 trillion liabilities. Let's not go there.
And also, don't forget that companies like Twitter or Nike or any of these companies, they don't make these decisions on a whim.
No.
When they make these decisions, they've calculated what's best for the company.
And they've had lawyers going, do this.
Yes, they've calculated that banning Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to get a small segment of the population angry at them, but the vast majority of their users are going to say, yeah, that's a good move.
Yeah.
They don't make this on a whim.
No.
And with Nike, when they endorse Colin Kaepernick or anything like that, they know what's better for their business.
Yeah.
They're not doing this just because, we don't
felt like
it. opinion. They don't care.
Yeah.
Well, they've learned, a lot of the social media have learned that, yes, many of them will scream about going over to Telegraph or wherever, Frank speech or whatever.
Yeah, they've all failed.
But they've all failed partially because they're terrifying, badly put together, but then also because a lot of the people get bored very quickly. There's nobody to argue against. There's no one for them to insult. And so they're just sitting there jerking off with each other.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear like what Marjorie Taylor Greene said the reason was that she was banned? Like what she thought?
Oh, what did she think?
So get this. This is so fucking weird. So Dan Crenshaw is like another Republican. He's like the he's got the eye patch and stuff.
Yeah, with the eye patch.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, he just came out with a new ad too that's just ridiculous. But anyway, he was talking about, I believe it was FEMA, and saying like we need to utilize FEMA, and Marjorie Taylor Greene like responded to him and was like, no, I don't, conservatives don't want that. I'm the true voice of conservatives, and we don't want FEMA to do anything, blah blah blah, right? And then like the next day she was kicked off Twitter. And then so she went and looked up like whether or not he had donors from anybody that worked at Twitter, right? And so she found some guy, that's some donor to Dan Crenshaw that like works at Twitter. And so of course it's a big conspiracy now from Dan Crenshaw attacking her.
This is what happens when you're dealing with conspiracy theorists. They will find any path possible to explain their stupidity. This is so delicious, to the point they will eat each other up at some point.
I'd like to see more of this cannibalism.
Yes,
right?
Keep it going.
Yeah.
Anyway, my dear Brindley, it's time. You have another brilliant moment for us?
Oh, I do.
Perfect.
We get
so
So get this now. Recently, Pathos has kind of gone nuts, and they basically booted the Friendly Atheist from Pathos.
Pathos?
Yeah.
Oh no! Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's been really hard to find stories on anything lately. To like working on videos and stuff. I've had to like go all over the place trying to find stuff. Find resources. But so this comes from Hemant Mehta's Substack. So if you do want to look for the best atheist news, if you were a fan of Hemant Mehta, check out his Substack. It's all up there for free, so you have access to it. But so what happened was Dave Hayes goes by the Christian Medic. We've covered him before. He's a QAnon advocate.
Yep. I remember him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's like he looks like Kingpin, sort of.
Yeah.
And so he has a new video here, and he makes some pretty interesting claims, and I'm going to go ahead and debunk it right after that. So let's take a look at this.
Accepting hate faith healing will make hospitals obsolete. I love
it. So check out this clip first, and then we'll go from there. But let's play the clip.
God gave me a dream back in 2013 or 2014. And in that dream, he showed me that he has a healthcare system that he wants to implement that is going to replace our current healthcare system. And let's see. No appointments necessary, no deductibles, no side effects. It's not like we're going to take out the wrong kidney if we pray for you. That no iatrogenic damages, no lawsuits, no liability.
So he's talking about the healthcare system will be people praying and being healed. So
okay,
this is so far.
I'd like to say the comparison of this guy to the Kingpin is an insult to the Kingpin on every level.
Right? They look like twins too. This is Patrick Gunnels.
I thought it was the same person.
He's talking to himself.
Yeah, I'm like, is this like a 10-year challenge? This is what I looked like 10 years ago. Look, I look the same today.
Wow, it does look like a 10-year challenge.
Yeah. A little backwards. So Praying Medic looks a little younger than Patrick Gunnels in this little screenshot.
Oh, he does. He does. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Do you have more of this clip?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll keep going.
I mean, what I'm seeing on Telegram with all these people getting healed is this: people are becoming awakened to the fact that if we partner with God, we could literally get to a point one day where we really don't need a healthcare system. In fact, on my live stream this afternoon on my Telegram channel, I was telling the story about how John G. Lake in the early 1900s, between 1910 and 1920, he started a thing in Spokane, Washington called the Healing Rooms.
Congratulations.
And he trained people in divine healing and deliverance, sent them out into the community, and they started praying for people to get healed. They had such great success. They had over 100,000 documented healing miracles in that time span.
Right.
There were so many people getting healed. The Spokane hospital closed.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
The Spokane
They
Hospital
literally closed down the
I hate
Spokane
you,
Hospital.
Edith.
It's a historical
Yeah.
fact. You can go on
It's a-
Wikipedia and look it up.
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, totally.
There was such great success, they actually closed down a hospital.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is
You know,
unbelievable.
God gave me a
That's
dream
exactly.
back in 2013 or
We're
2014.
starting over
Yeah.
again here.
And in that
Sorry.
dream,
All right, so
Okay, let's start
so-
at the beginning.
So many things to go through there.
yeah.
Let's
So the
unpack
first thing, the first thing is he claimed that 100,000 miracles were documented history, right?
Yeah.
In the
between what,
1800s.
I thought it was
Yeah.
1910 to 1920. Okay.
Yeah,
1900,
1915 to 1920 was when it was
Oh, okay,
open.
19. Well, still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very close.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's not true. They claimed that there were 100,000 miracles, but there is absolutely no confirmation on any of it. It is all just, claims.
I'm shocked.
I know, right?
Just shocked. Especially in the early 1900s, where things like video and photographs and stuff were a little harder to get a hold of.
Yeah, no,
Right. Exactly.
I was really busy during that time.
Yeah.
The other claim is that a hospital closed as a result of the healer's success.
Yeah. The Spokane
nope.
Hospital or whatever.
Not a single record of that happening at all. Except there was one hospital or hospital adjacent thing that did close within that time span. And that what? Is that
Because of budget cuts?
No, right.
That's
No,
usually when a hospital closes. It's because they cut the budget. That's usually what happened.
Right. No,
Yeah.
it was that the healer center. That one closed.
Jesus Christ.
And here's why.
They were so successful, they closed themselves down.
Yeah.
They were.
It's because they weren't following the fire code.
Oh, Jesus.
That's why they got closed down. And yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I love these preachers because he says at the very beginning, he says, I had a dream that God spoke to me.
Yeah.
2014, 2013. I'm not sure when.
like
What do you
8
mean
years
you're
ago.
not sure when?
Yeah.
You have a dream with God? I would have down the time, the
The
duration of the dream, the date. I would have it down to the minutest detail if I spoke to the Almighty God.
Yep.
Right.
2013, 2014. I'm not sure.
Somewhere around there.
Kind of vague. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
That's always been a problem with the entire faith. The same thing with, Jesus existed for sure. Okay, what did he look like? Nobody knows. We just have a vague, he was a man. Oh, okay. And he must have been, how tall was he? Nobody knows.
That's I have that argument frequently with people online, and it's even with atheists.
You would think
atheists will argue with me that Jesus existed, and I'm like, okay.
But you would think if you
some evidence, please.
If you're the disciple and you actually believe you're a disciple and you actually believe that the guy you're following is the Son of God, you would collect everything from him. You would collect his toenail clippings.
And his story
would collect everything.
And his story wouldn't have been written however many years after.
Exactly.
It would have been written as it was happening.
I mean, we know for example, Hercules. I use this example on a regular basis. Hercules, the Greek demigod, which we know didn't exist for real.
Yep.
But we actually have his shoe size.
Exactly.
But the most charismatic figure of all time, Jesus Christ, we can't even describe him at all.
Right?
I mean, the Bible says he wasn't good looking.
What'd you say, Brent?
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying, the Bible says he wasn't good looking. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah. I mean, the Hercules, for example, they actually used his shoe size and a mathematical equation, which started the first running tracks. Actually based on his shoe size of Hercules. Weird. Yeah, so I mean, we actually know what shoe size the guy supposedly had.
Yeah,
and he's not even real. But yet, supposedly Jesus that was supposedly real, we don't know nothing about him.
Yeah,
I mean, are you kidding me?
We still argue what color his skin was.
Yes, it's so ridiculous.
And his eyes and his hair. They're like blue eyes, blonde hair. Really? Middle East.
We're going off the path here, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Thank you, Spokane.
Right. But it's just, it's so funny how they'll just say shit. They'll just say things, and you can see, like, okay, if somebody were to hear him say that, right, and they, like, let's say they're like, 20% skeptical, and they're like, okay, let me go look this up. Oh, look, there was one that existed. Done. That's all true. They'll look at just the healer clinic room or whatever that did exist. Therefore, what he said is correct, and that's how they function. Like they find little things that they can then add things onto that you can't check. I mean, that's in 1915. I mean, geez Louise, it's like gangs in New York time.
It's a bit like those people that say all of Exodus was real because apparently they found a chariot wheel in the Red Sea.
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
But let's give it for them for a second. You found a chariot wheel in the Red Sea. Okay. How did that chariot wheel get there? There could be 1,000 ways. A chariot fell off a boat at some point.
Yep.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with Moses. It could be just some guy who just rolled his fucking chariot into the sea and just left it there.
It could be a boat wheel that just looks like a chariot wheel.
It could be absolutely anything. No, absolutely. It is Moses. I was like, are you kidding me? And I think most of their faith hinges on the fact of how convinced the person that tells you the story is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think, wow, this guy's pretty convinced it must be true. He
Yeah.
could be completely bullshitting you, but he sounds so convincing that they believe.
I'm not going to bother fact checking him.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Well, and you notice that's like the main thing they do in church is like, as long as oh yes, and it's true that they do in this, like, they do that because they feel like if they're compelling enough and they act as though it's so true, and they're saying it with such gravitas that everybody will believe it, and that's their whole bread and butter right there.
Yeah. It totally is. It's the art of convincing somebody besides you. It's just the art of appearing confident in the way you say it. It
100%.
really is that.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's sad because, like, we on the other side of the coin, because people do get convinced more when people do sound more confident, right? Yes. But you should be not confident. You should be doubtful, even of yourself. That's called critical thinking. You gotta be full of doubt. And that's sort of the problem, is the people that are full of doubt are the ones nobody's listening to, even though they're the ones checking themselves to make sure that they're as accurate as humanly possible.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they say, the problem with today is the idiots are so confident about themselves.
Yes.
The smart people are doubtful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. That's crazy. It's ridiculous.
Thank you so much for that, Brent Lee. That was great.
So.
Let's take a quick pause so I can blow my nose. And
Yes,
after that, when
please.
we come back, we'll be talking to Professor Edwin Hodge about naturalized people and independent citizens and all these kind of kooks. That'd be kind of fun. So stay with us.
It's where atheists gather. This is LATV 2.0. This is where the atheists gather. This is home. This is LATV 2.0.
I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Amy with an I.
And we're the hosts of Secular Soup, where each week we offer up a bowl of real talk about atheism, feminism, politics, parenting, and whatever else we want to talk about because it's our podcast.
Just listen to what these random dudes are saying about our show.
This is what would happen if Daria and Jane grew up and started a podcast.
So if you like extremely foul-mouthed ladies with opinions, this is the podcast for you.
Grab a bowl and taste the magic. Slurp even this.
Hi, I'm God, and I just wanted to make sure to tell you not to listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud. That's Unapologetics with an X at the end. But, definitely do not listen to the show. I mean, I swear to me, alright, I will murder my son. Well, I mean, I kind of already did that, but don't listen to the show, okay? Hey, Lucy.
Can you not call me that, okay? We already went over what my name is, okay? It's Lucifer.
Alright, look, Luce. You want to come with me? I'm gonna go fuck with this guy, Joe.
No, don't do that, okay? Can you just leave him alone?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill his family.
No, don't do that.
I'm gonna give him sores all over his body.
Don't do that. That's disgusting.
And, I'm gonna kill all of his livestock. You know.
Stop saying things. Just stop.
And I'm gonna blame the whole thing on you. All right, let's go, bud. Remember, don't listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud.
Hey, definitely listen to that show. It's awesome. It's really cool. He's really a dick.
I heard that.
All right, our next guest is a professor of sociology at University of Victoria. He is a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer, Professor Edwin Hodge. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
You say that now, but you might be regretting this in a few minutes. Professor Hodge, people might not, it's your first time on the show, so people don't know you. Maybe you'd be so kind to give us a quick bio as to who Edwin Hodge is.
Sure. So I teach in the Department of Sociology at UVic. I'm also a research fellow at the Center for Global Studies, also at UVic. Primarily, I look at radicalization, extremism, and conspiratorial ideologies, but I also do research in border theory, border studies, and gender.
I think you and Professor Joel Bakken at the UBC are going to become two of our favorite guests here. I think we're going to have to bring you back on a regular basis, Professor Hodge. And he's obviously a lot smarter than either one of us down here. So I guess today we are talking about sovereign citizens or naturalized people or free man on the lamb or whatever you want to call them. Take us into a deep dive into this, Professor. How did this idea ever come about?
It's like a lot of these sort of conspiratorial beliefs. It comes out of places that you really wouldn't think. To sort of find conspiracy theories. The sovereign citizen movement, as best we understand it, really got its start in the collapse of the agricultural industry in the United States in the early 1980s. There was this period of time after the election of Ronald Reagan, where Reagan was really heavily informed by this belief that the business of government is to get out of the way of business. And so he passed a few really interesting, laws and executive orders. But one of the most important was he actually broke the back of a labor strike among air traffic controllers, which, again, doesn't sound like something that would create a conspiracy theory. But the result was that other big industries all around the United States realized they were now in an environment where they could break the back of labor as well. And so what you started seeing were policies that were designed to specifically help businesses and specifically harm small, like, employers and workers. And one of the hardest hit areas for this was the farming industry. Farmers all across the US, we're talking about not like agribusiness or Monsanto or anything. We're talking about like mom and dad farmers, these little mom and pop kind of farms that had anywhere from 20, 30 head of cattle to a few hundred head of cattle, small feedlots, that sort of thing, and small like cereal and grain farmers. These policies wiped them out. They were, the prices of seeds, the prices of animals, the prices of maintenance, everything went through the roof. They weren't able to fight back. And so they collapsed, and their farms started to collapse one by one. Thousands and thousands of farmers across the United States losing their jobs, their livelihood, but also losing their homes that had been in their families for in some cases centuries, right, for generations. So this period of sociologically, we call this a period of social and economic disruption, where people begin to lose their footing, they lose their mooring, they lose their livelihood, they lose everything that is a part of their identity. And they started looking, farmers all over the place started looking around to try to find some way of fighting back. Now they couldn't hire lawyers, right? They're broke, they're bankrupt, their farms are gone, so they can't fight back. They can't go after these big agribusiness companies because what are they going to do? So increasingly, they started turning to fringe personalities. In Canada, they came to call themselves gurus. But in the United States, they started calling themselves things like constitutional activists or tax code activists. And they began to sort of move in these fractured, disrupted, desperate circles, selling a product. And the product was, you pay me money and I will teach you how to get your life back. And the way that they constructed their arguments, the way they sort of put it together was they said, listen, you know who caused all this to happen, right? It was laws passed by the government, the federal government. Well, do you know who, they're illegitimate. That government is in the pocket of big business. It's in the pocket of internationalists. Therefore, it's illegal. And so what they did to you is illegal. And so they actually owe you restitution. And so they began to sell this idea that was very popular to very desperate people. And that's actually sort of where this all started, was in tax rebellions.
That's amazing, because I do recall, and this is over 10 years ago, I did receive an email about somebody telling me that along the same lines, for a fee, he could show me how to manipulate the law. And he told me this, for example, he says, when you write your name, you write like capital K, small E-V-I-N. But he says, when you receive a letter from the government, it's all in block, big, bold, black, big letters. He said, that's not a person. That's they were saying that Kevin Francis is an entity, a corporation. You're a different person than that. And anyway, it was very convoluted, but there was a price to pay for it. I think you wanted like 10% of my gross earning for the year or something like that. To show me how to do this. And I'm surprised to hear that this started only in the 80s with Ronald Reagan. I thought it was much older of a movement.
There's long been elements that sort of blend into it, right? So the tax protest, kind of the notion that the government is this tyrannical and in fact illegitimate entity, that started in the 80s. But there's other movements that emerged earlier that have sort of welded themselves to this. One of those movements is what we call the Posse Comitatus movement. And the Posse Comitatus movement is this idea that, so back in the Old West, right? In the Old West, lawmen were few and far between. But the government of the day passed a law called the Posse Comitatus Act. And the Posse Comitatus Act allowed duly appointed lawmakers to effectively create a posse, which were they were legally authorized lawmen for so long as they were required, right? And so they were armed, sort of almost a paramilitary organization under the direction of a sheriff, right? Of a county sheriff or a city sheriff, who could then direct them to enact the law or to bring justice. That act, sorry?
Temporarily deputized.
Yeah, exactly. They became temporary deputies. And so when back in the old spaghetti westerns, if someone was like, we're going to get a posse, well, that was like a quasi-legal thing. And so that act also made its way into conspiratorial circles where especially militiamen and white supremacists said, oh yeah, see right there, Posse Comitatus. It's totally legit for us to have like a body of armed men going out and, for example, patrolling the Arizona desert to look for illegals. And this is the justification that they used. Well, sovereign citizens, they blended this tax protests, anti-federal government policy with the Posse Comitatus Act, with this Posse Comitatus movement, and created this kind of, and a few other strands as well. But the end result is this movement that believes that the only legitimate source of government is basically the county level, maybe even the municipal level, that it is directly pulled from the Constitution, that judge-made law at the federal and state level are illegitimate, and that they, as citizens, are sovereign in themselves, right? They don't belong to anybody. And as such, they can create grand juries, which they claim that they do this all the time. They issue judgments against lawyers and judges and city officials and basically anybody that they don't like. And they do things like occupy wildlife nature preserves in Oregon.
Yes, nice one. Nice. And I gotta say, Posse Comitatus sound totally like one of those punk rock groups that Brent
Right?
likes.
Right?
It
Oh,
really
yeah.
does. I bought their album.
I have a quick question, because part of the sovereign citizenship, or at least for some of the level of the sovereign citizen stuff, also includes that we have to go back to maritime law. What is that connection? Because that's one of the parts where I'm just like, now because I'm like looking, going, okay, so it started with the farmers in the 80s. So where do we go back to maritime law?
Okay, so we don't actually go back to maritime law. Their argument is that the federal government is operating under maritime law. And so they'll say things like, they'll go into a court and they'll be like, I don't recognize the legitimacy of this court. And the judge will be like, what are you talking about? And their response is, you got gold tassels on your flag. That's what naval vessels have, and I'm not a ship.
What?
And then they get tased and dragged out. But like that's kind of their jam. So they argue that they are, as Kevin was saying, they argue that they are what's called flesh and blood persons. And a flesh and blood person is subject only to natural law or to God-made law. The corporate straw person, that's so if you look at your passport and it says like Hodge, Edwin, I mean, obviously yours won't, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Hodge, Edwin, that's the corporate straw man. And the government has used that fictional entity to invest in the stock markets or take out loans from foreign governments or whatever. And a certain amount of the nation's wealth is attached to that corporate straw person. So they believe that if they can separate the flesh and blood person from the corporate straw man, they are now able to, so they can step apart. And now they, as the flesh and blood person, can sue the government to get access to that money. There's been a few cases in Canada where freemen on the land, sovereign citizens, have done this. They've tried to sue the government for like $11 billion or whatever. And they try to sue because they argue that money's theirs. It belongs to their corporate straw person, which belongs to them.
Wow.
Real quick, for the people out there that might not know, not me, I totally know, but what is maritime law?
It's the law of the seas.
Oh,
it governs.
Okay.
It governs how governs things like bills of the lading. It governs like how ships are treated in port, or how they're checked, or what flag they fly under. There's a whole different kind. Sometimes it'll be called admiralty law. But they basically argue that anytime you see a flag with like fringe on it, that's a naval ship, and therefore that court is operating under naval law, and because they're not a boat, it doesn't apply to them.
That's so funny.
Can we then
Bradley only knows
on a
pirate
boat? Because I would be okay with that.
I'll be a boat.
Get access to that money. I'll be a boat. I'll be whatever.
Well, I was going to say, what's interesting about that is I have a relative in the Navy, and something we've kind of talked about, and like Navy bases, even if they are on land, I believe are still considered technically boats.
Weird.
Because there is an admiral who is in charge of the base and all of the operations on that base. So it is kind of a boat. So all we have to do is move all the courts onto naval bases, and we'll be great.
Or just turn Canada into one giant naval base.
We can work
As long
with
as it's not a U.S. naval base.
It's semantics.
It's understandable from a lay person's point of view. It's understandable how this could fool a normal lay person, because there's some things in life that we don't understand necessarily, right? The idea that, yes, when you do receive a letter from the government, everything's spelled in big letters for your name. And for example, when you walk you go outside of town and you get this little town that says unincorporated, town of X, it's unincorporated. Well, why does a town need to be corporated? And why is the town unincorporated? So it's very easy for these people to say, yeah, there's some truth to this because I see it right here in life.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice for some of the layperson like ourselves that have no idea about all these laws and maritime laws and if Brent leaves a ship or not? So,
I mean, here's the $1 million question, right? Because a lot of the folks that buy into this, so there's a bunch of different ways we can kind of understand them. But, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole, but sociologically, when we look at folks like this, we talk about them as low information citizens or low information people, right? And that is, they're not dumb, right? They're not dumb. They're not stupid, right? They are, they just lack some critical information. And that the ignorance of that particular, thing, an understanding of basics of the law or basics of like how the Canadian legal system works or the Canadian Constitution works, like that ignorance is it's a pit that they can fall into very easily. They can be tripped up by. Mm-hmm. And the trick is to help them, either convince them through argumentation, which rarely works, or lead them using sort of Socratic question and answer kind of stuff, lead them to a recognition that they don't actually know a whole lot. And it might not be a good idea to trust some dude they found on the internet who said that if you just write your name in all capital letters, you'll be able to free yourself from the government. It's a really tricky thing, because one of the things that makes or allows these kinds of movements to thrive is sort of low-key anti-intellectualism. And I'm not saying like, these are the people that are, they're going to put the teachers up against the wall when the revolution comes. They're just the ones who say things like, oh yeah, that person, they sound like a know-it-all. Right. Oh yeah, you sound like a know-it-all. Yeah. Or yeah, that's you've got some book learning. Maybe you're book smart, but I'm street smart. It's like, well,
yeah. But everything looks great from your ivory fucking tower, dude.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, like, I sort of use the analogy of the mechanic, because lots of these folks, they might not ever step foot in the university, but they've damn sure been to a mechanic or something similar. If you're driving your car and it's making a weird knocking sound, right? Who do you take it to? Do you take it to a mechanic, someone that you know is a mechanic? He says, yeah, I'm a mechanic. Here's all my mechanic. Here's my red seal. Here's, I'm a mechanic. Or do you take it to Jerry up the street, who's never really held with those like elitist mechanical schools, but he can sure tell you that the knocking in your car comes from the fucking gremlin that's living in that twirly bit in the bottom, right? Like, there's a fundamental difference in information. Some information's really good and some is bad. And some people tend to know a bit more than others. It's not a sign of weakness or indoctrination to trust someone who knows more. But that distrust is hard baked into these kinds of ideologies. So, like, the question, how do you reach them? I can't, because of who I am. Oh, you got a PhD? Oh, you got some fucking book learning? I'm not going to listen to you. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
We've all dealt with them.
You see all these professors from UVic driving around with their Ferraris. They're all over the place. You can tell.
Yeah. My Ferrari, my almost 20-year-old sedan.
Is that books I see behind you there? Huh? Books? Look at that. You get books.
On my Walmart bookshelves. Yeah. We sociologists, we're just raking in that fat dough.
Yeah. And one thing, it seems like, if they can find some type of question, right? If they just like you say, like somebody tells them that, hey, did you know the law actually means this? They put that information that they got from that guy on the same level as if it's equal to, as valid as the actual information coming out of scholarship.
Yeah.
And that is just, goddamn, that's frustrating.
So it's frustrating, but it's understandable. This is one of the things that I tell my students all the time. Like, we can like make fun of these guys all day long. I mean, they give us ammunition every time they open their mouths. Yeah. But the other way we can look at them is we can say, look, a lot of this information, especially these days, comes through social media.
Yep.
And the information that comes in is so fast and there's so much of it that you have to make snap decisions constantly to filter through that information. We have access to more bits and pieces of information in a day than our parents had in their whole lifetimes, right? And we have had to adapt. Now, some people, the naive ones, like to think, oh, we've just evolved so that we can process information faster. We actually can't. And so what we do instead is we develop heuristics, right? Little mental shortcuts that let us filter through information rapidly. And the most common heuristic we have is, does that thing agree with something I already believe? If yes, it's more real to me. It's a fact. And so you find people who maybe they're a little anti-authoritarian anyways, which fine, like when I was younger, I was super anti-authoritarian. I'm still kind of anti-authoritarian, but which is harder, being authority in a classroom. It's a paradox I walk every day, such as my burden. But we, when we are given these bits of information, if we're already kind of leaning against like the government is untrustworthy, we are more likely to accept that information, right? It's sort of classic confirmation bias. We're more likely to accept that information. But once we accept it, we start closing the doors on the outsides of our information sort of ecosystem. We start closing off pathways in that network to the stuff that we think now is a little more radical. So we start moving slowly down this funnel of radicalization. And the farther we go, the longer we go, the more we start cutting out information we don't agree with. And then eventually we get to a point where we stop cutting out bits of information. We start cutting out whole ways of thinking.
Right. So that's kind of like with the flat earthers. They have to say that space doesn't exist, right?
Exactly.
That space isn't real because they hold the flat earth thing as a conclusion. And anybody that says, okay, but what about this? They go, oh, well, that's not real. Because it's exactly what you're saying. It's just like the fact that they're having to deny the reality causes them, or because that they accept this belief, they'll have to deny the reality because that's how it's going to have to work. It's one or the other.
And you get to a certain point where in order to deny that reality, you don't just have to like stop listening to one person, right? So it's not like, oh yeah, I got to stop listening to that one professor who keeps talking shit about my beliefs. Instead, it's all professors from that department or that discipline are all equally bullshit. So now, in order to maintain the schema, the worldview that you have, you just eliminate that whole branch of knowledge. And then you can go a little bit deeper. And now it's all academics they're all bad. You eliminate all of them. Where do you get your information? Joe fucking Rogan. I mean, once you're there, you're lost. Like if you look at Joe Rogan and go, that's a man I need to listen to. I would suggest humbly that you stop, reassess your life choices, and maybe go to a monastery for a while, just for a spa, whatever. Just sit on a mountaintop somewhere. Just get away.
Put on Left at the Valley instead. How about
there
we do that?
We're more credible anyway. But it's amazing how we're seeing these sovereign citizens conspiracy essentially snowball into something bigger and bigger. Where is the movement now? If as an expert, where do you see them now? I mean, are they really getting back to their roots, or are they really expanding to other conspiracies? Where are they now?
They're colonizing. So they are the sovereign citizens in the 90s and early 2000s. You could mostly find them around sort of the paranoid edges of the far right. You could find them at like gun shows, right? You'd find them at gun shows or at shooting ranges or veteran halls. Like you'd find them in places where you would expect to find right-wing thinkers of a particular anti-government bent. These days, you can find their rhetoric on health sites, yoga blogs, and mom blogs. You can actually find this stuff. There's a term from another conspiracy theory that we call pastel QAnon, which is this. It is the framing of a certain conspiratorial belief system to appeal to women And sovereign citizens and freemen on the land are beginning to do that too. But they're also welding their ideology to the anti-vax and anti-mask movement.
Oh, God.
Because the sovereign citizen movement doesn't have a lot of traction. It's fringe. It's wildly obscure and arcane and weird. But tons of people are vaccine hesitant, and tons of people don't like mask mandates. Well, now the sovereign citizens movement is giving them the language to in their minds fight back. And this is why we're starting to see anti-vax movements or anti-vax groups issuing like notices of vaccine liability.
Yes.
These are what are called quasi-legal arguments, and they are the bread and butter of the sovereign citizens movement. But now we're seeing it in the anti-vax movement too, because it's a language that already appeals to them, right? It's anti-government, it's free thinking, it's, you got it off Facebook, but it also has the aesthetics of law, right? It looks legalese, or right? It looks sort of legal. So it really appeals to them.
Wow.
So, I was going to say, is it all right if I ask a question quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay, because this actually kind of goes back a little bit more to the past of this, because I have an interest in conspiracy theories and stuff, and a lot of them always seem to stem from things like the Protocols of Zion. Does the sovereign citizen theories, do those also tie back to that as well?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean,
what's the right wing? There was one that
just one.
What's a far right conspiracy theory without a little bit of anti-Semitism?
Right.
Yeah. So early sovereigns, especially in the so-called Sagebrush Rebellion, which was in the 70s and early 80s, these early proto-sovereigns and then the early sovereign citizens, one of their biggest enemies has always been the internationalists, international bankers, globalists, right? These are all dog whistles for the Jews, right? For Jewish folk and for Judaism. Sometimes they'll say the quiet part out loud and they'll call it like international Zionism or international Khazarism. It sounds more sciencey, I guess. But it's all about aesthetics, right? And I don't mean like things that are pretty. I mean aesthetics, the look of a thing. Yep. And a lot of what they do is about the aesthetics of a thing. And so so international Khazarism, it looks more academic, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. But
they want to look academic without being it. Yeah.
Well, but yes. Okay. So can I do a little bit of theory for you?
Yes.
By all means, please do.
Let's talk about a little guy named Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault is, among other things, was a brilliant thinker. And if you've ever read his work and gone, this guy's really hard to understand, it's because he wrote most of his work high. He really liked morphine, is what I'm saying. So anyways, he basically argued, he says, that old expression, knowledge is power. He says, yeah, but literally, knowledge emerges from relations of power, right? It's deeply implicated in relations of power. So to know something is to have power, is to manifest power. When we look at experts, right, we have a society that's built on sort of built on the legacy of the Enlightenment. Everything's about reason, rationality. That which is known is that which can be observed, tested, confirmed, right? So that's the only thing that's known. Foucault says, yeah, but it's more than that. It's not just that the only thing that can be knowledge is science. It's that anything that doesn't look like science is immediately devalued as other, right? So faith obviously can't be knowledge. Revelation can't be knowledge. Self-reflection can't be knowledge. Emotions can't be knowledge. This is why we get the facts versus feelings, even though that's bullshit. But Foucault says, once you construct this kind of society, all power, the only thing that can have influence, the only thing that can have power are things that fit the ideals that we've constructed, right? It's more complex than that, but here we are. These folks they distrust folks in power, but they recognize that they have it, that they have that power. So if they can construct an alternative framework, an alternative discourse, right? A different system of knowledge, facts, power, and value, they can compete on the same level. And that's where we are right now, right? We have experts and we have non-experts. My understanding, my knowledge comes from a decade or almost 2 decades now of formal academic study and research. Somebody else's knowledge, their understanding comes from binge watching 15 seasons of Ancient Aliens and some YouTube channels.
Yeah, they're like, I was watching Alex Jones before everybody, before it was
exactly
cool,
But because we're in this weird space where anti-intellectualism is everywhere, expertise and pseudo-expertise, they don't just kind of exist in the same space. For Foucault, they seem to be equal because they're both influential. They're both displaying the same patterns of power, which is why, like, we might look at someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene and be like, how the hell can anybody believe what she's saying? And the truth is, people believe her because they make very little distinction between sort of academic, empirical, rigorous, sort of Enlightenment style knowledge and pseudo knowledge constructed through this different kind of sort of knowledge production scheme. Anyways, that's just some fun theory for you.
No, I love it. I was also wondering, is that also why you see like these sovereign citizens, for example, they'll say, we don't want to participate in society when it's something bad, but when it's an advantage, like a monetary advantage, they're more than happy to take it. It feels like guerrilla warfare, It's like you don't want to be part of the big army, but you'll shoot them and use their guns against them.
Oh yeah, no, they're very pragmatic. They don't want to be a part of society, when it infringes on what they perceive their rights to be. But they have no problem using public roads and hospitals and schools, although increasingly sovereigns and freemen on the land don't use schools. They want to pull their kids into homeschooling. And sovereign ideas really make the rounds in a lot of homeschool networks. Not all of them, right? Some are totally legit homeschool networks, but others, especially in the United States, exist on the kinds of fringes of, say, Christian and even secular societies. And in those spaces, those ideas get passed around a lot.
Wow. Is part of the sovereign citizen, is it the belief that you don't have to pay taxes? That's part of it?
Oh yeah. Not only do you not have to pay taxes, but the government owes you.
Yeah, and you're right, because it kind of crossing these lines, because I go to a kratom shop. It's like a kava bar, and they sell you all these different herbs. They got healing crystals, they got shirts that say I am an eternal being and things like that. And the dude just starts going off about how you really don't have to pay taxes according to the Constitution, and I'm like, really, you, man? Like, I figured you were just some pothead that was like, but I never would have thought that it would go to that. I always imagine like right wing, that sort of thing, but it's crazy.
This is where things get really, really dicey, right? Is these old right wing distinctions, they kind of fall apart when we study these movements. Now, I'm not, for 1 minute, I'm not advocating this sort of bullshit horseshoe theory crap. Like that is itself a not particularly well supported political theory. What I'm saying is that the right left distinction is good for like talking about traditional politics, right? Because traditional political parties organize themselves along that spectrum. But these movements begin to dissolve and break apart and get very, very fuzzy around the edges, such that we actually see these kinds of fringe beliefs becoming increasingly nonpartisan. It's not about your political affiliation anymore. It's about your position vis-a-vis governmentality in general, like just the idea of being governed. Anarchists can hold these views. Even some democratic socialists will hold some of these views. And one of the sort of the easier ways to think about this, or a better example, is look at the 9/11 Truth movement. That started as a left-wing movement, but it isn't anymore, right? We've moved into what a lot of scholars call a postmodern information economy. That is, these old ways of understanding things the old models don't hold. And so it makes it hard for us to predict how these things will change or grow or who will adapt to them, like who will will join them.
Wow.
So the whole thing with the dissolving of the two parties within these conspiracies and stuff, do you think that kind of has come together with the QAnon movement, or was that happening before the QAnon movement?
It was happening before QAnon, but QAnon is like, if conspiracy theories are Pokemon, QAnon is the ultimate form of any one of them, right? It's like QAnon is this ultimate apotheosis of this kind of attitude, this kind of ideology. It started as a pro-Trump, right, MAGA, we're gonna storm the Capitol kind of thing, but by now, right, December 2021, January 2022, it's nonpartisan, right? People all across the spectrum, people from all walks of life, all economic classes, all ethnic demographics, all age brackets, all education levels. There is no predictive variable to determine who's going to be in QAnon, because everybody is, right? It's one of those things. We can't even estimate its numbers. Certainly the people that buy into it, at least a couple of its ideas, we're talking the tens of millions.
I was going to say, it's that part of it too. It's just the factor that it is so wide. It's like the ultimate Hydra, where it has so many heads that it's like, okay, well, what counts as an actual QAnon person? Is it just the children piece, or does it have to be the children and JFK Jr.?
Yeah, exactly. There's a way of thinking about social networks, how information propagates. Traditionally, when we look at how information propagates through a social network, we can draw some pretty easy, used to be able to draw these really easy maps, right? The family was this information production network. The children sort of grew out of that family, and they would move to new locations, establish a new family, which would create new sort of nodes for information distribution. These days, when we look at how information gets transmitted through these networks, it's what we call rhizomatic. It means that there's no beginning, there's no end. Think of like a root system, like grass or a fungus. It's so interconnected that there are no big nodes anymore. There are countless tiny nodes. Every single one of them receives and generates information and spreads it through their own networks. It's the idea that there's like, oh, we got to find the leader of QAnon. No, there is no leader of QAnon.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, and people like what's her name? Didulo, the so-called Queen of Canada.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's QAnon, but she's also espousing sovereign and freeman ideology, and she's espousing like Wakefield-esque anti-vax ideologies and 9/11 and flat Earth and all these other things. And now that she's the government, the police raided her home and they took a bunch of her electronics and they took her in for a psych eval, and she passed and went back out. Someone else will just pop up somewhere else, or at least that node simply becomes a little bit more influential until it dies off and another one becomes more influential. It's just this Gordian knot of information.
Yeah.
Sorry, go for it, Rizzy.
I was going to say, if there's one thing with QAnon that I found fascinating, it is just how they absorb and copy things from all over. I have a very big interest in the Satanic Panic and that whole Save the Children. I'm like, you basically copy pasted the We Believe the Children.
100%.
Only now you don't have actual children, so nobody can actually check anything.
No, it's somebody's uncle's, nephew's, brother's, cousin's, girlfriend's former roommate.
Which
I love that reference. I got that reference.
Good.
Baseballs.
Oh.
So, Dr. Hodge, if we go back to Michel Foucault there, and you were saying, you got informed society on one side and you got misinformed society on the other side, and they've come to equal power. What if the misinformed side actually ends up, for like another term, winning? And you take a country like the United States, where the majority of the population becomes like that, misinformed. What does that mean, in your opinion, economically speaking?
I mean,
I'd like to say we're screwed, but
I mean, I don't want to be that doomsayer, but it's not a what if they win. It's they did.
Yeah.
They did win. Like, the Enlightenment is over. There is no, it's over. From a theoretical perspective, from an empirical perspective, most sociologists have basically acknowledged that the age of the Enlightenment's done. We're in something new. Post-modernity, risk modernity, liquid modernity, whatever. But think about it. The world is literally on fire.
Yeah.
Are we doing anything about it?
No.
No. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
Like, we know that trickle-down economics, supply-side economics, voodoo economics, we know that it doesn't work. Has anybody stopped using it? No, they keep using it. Austerity, it doesn't work, but we still use it. Donald Trump won the presidency, right? A man who could not be more ignorant of the world, short of being dead. There are very few people. There's no one who's more ignorant about the world than he is, and yet he won. And he didn't just win by a little. 70-something million people followed it, right? Yeah. The side of low information has won, and that's where we are. And the sooner that we realize that and start thinking about how to strategize and how to push back against that. One of the great failings of the left is that we stopped innovating. We stopped coming up with new ideas. Yeah. We said, we won the culture wars in the 80s. We won. Feminism changed the world for women. No, it didn't. It changed the world for white, straight, cis, middle-class women. Gay rights happened. Yeah, well, it happened for white, cis men first, and then everyone else was sort of pulled into it. But things really haven't gotten a lot better for pretty much anybody else. Queer folk are still marginalized. Trans folk are still disproportionately victimized. But my point is, all of the things that the Enlightenment promised, right? Emancipation, liberation, equality, fraternity, that never really happened. And now we're in something new where it seems that so much of our policy and so many of our the things that are guiding us or governing our decisions don't come from a place of reason. They come from a place of reaction, fear, rage, anxiety. And so the left ceded that ground. Right. We said we won everything. We won. We don't have to do anything. Let's just laugh at those conservatives, laugh at their silly little purity balls, laugh at their silly little big tent revivals, laugh at them as they start trying to convince us that the world is 6,000 years old. How'd that work out for us?
Right.
That's a great point. That is a great point. Yeah. Wow. That is one hell of a conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Hodge, for coming on the show today and explaining all that to us. But before I let you go, actually, one quick little question. This kind of finish on a bit of a darker side.
I'm sorry.
Reality, you're exposing reality here. So for us as a lay person, what can we do to maybe start bucking the trend, trying to reverse things? The lay person out there who hears us here talking about this right now, what can they do to try to make things better on the local level for themselves?
Two things. One, recognize that time isn't linear, right? The progress isn't linear.
Mm-hmm.
Things have taken a dark turn. That's not forever. It's for as long as we allow it to persist.
Right.
So we can change things. We can push back. We can make things better, but we actually have to put in the work. We can't rest on our laurels. We can't sit back and be like, haha, those silly creationists, they're teaching our kids right now. We need to become teachers. We need to become lawyers and doctors and scholars. We need to take what we learn, take all of our skills and push them back out into the world. We need to come up with ideas that inspire people and make them want to believe in us again, make them want to join us, right? Because right now, like, look at the NDP. The NDP are so terrified of being called democratic socialists that they're running to the center of the map. But the ideas that they had when they were democratic socialists were good ideas.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are they afraid of them? Why are we so embarrassed or afraid? Why don't we just say what we believe and show people how it works? So that's the one thing. At the local level, it means getting involved. It means actually going out and talking. There's a guy in Kelowna, David Crawford. He, if you've ever seen this dude on the news, he's the guy that all the anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers stand on one side of the road, and he stands on the other side of the road with a sign that says "Yay vaccines, yay science."
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he gets dunked on all the time. He gets shouted at, harassed. He gets spat at. He gets screamed at. He gets threatened all the time. Do you know what he does? He gets his ass up the next morning and he goes back out and he does it again. Yeah. There's a young woman in Victoria. She can't be more than 21, 22 years old. And when the anti-vaxxers and the Sovsits are down on the ledge lawn screaming about their rights, she's standing right there. She doesn't engage with them, but she's holding a sign. She's standing right there. She's doing it. And that's inspiring. It brings other people. It causes them to come out and want to do it. So we have to start doing that again. We got to rediscover what it means to truly be activists.
Wow. Wow, that is a great way to end the show. Thank you so much, Professor Hodge. I really, really appreciate that. If people want to find out more about what you do at University of UVic and your research, where can they find you?
Well, that's the thing. I keep a pretty low profile, but I do have a Twitch channel that I talk sociology and play video games on Saturday nights. It's called Sociocalypse.
That's awesome.
And on starting on Tuesday, I'm doing a stream every Tuesday night where I'll be watching things like Ancient Aliens and conspiratorial movies and giving hot takes and sort of showing where they fall apart and why they don't work.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I'm sorry?
That's all on Twitch?
It's all on Twitch.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Awesome. Fantastic. Professor Hodge, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We will bring you back, guarantee. We love you already. You're part of the family. Before I let you go, I got to have you say, hi, this is Professor Edwin Hodge of University of Victoria, and I took a left at the Valley.
Hi, this is Professor Edwin Hodge. I'm from the University of Victoria, and I took a left at the Valley.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
And that was Professor Edwin Hodge of UVic. Oh, my God. Love him. What a great guy.
Yeah, no kidding.
What? I just love the guy's energy. I just love that. I mean, he was just like on point. The plethora of information we got from this.
You know his
Oh my gosh.
Your ass off at every class
man,
he's in.
We will bring
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, I'd love to take classes with him. That would be
Me
so
too.
great.
Right.
Not far
Oh,
away.
man.
No, it's just
Adopt me. Adopt me.
We brought such high caliber guests on this show. You know, was Professor Joel Back and Professor Hector Garcia, Dr. Hector Garcia, and now Mr. Professor Hodge, and et cetera, et cetera. We got so many of them, and it's fantastic to hear them come like that. And I love the advice he has for us, because it's the kind of advice we've been talking about on the show for a long time. Even something like the atheist movement. I've talked a lot about the apatheists, the ones that say, well, we have the truth on our side, we don't need to do anything. No. And we've said this over and over again. They never stop on the other side. They never stop. They never give up.
Right.
And as the professor said there, they've essentially won. Why? Because of apathy. And it's a big thing to take from this episode. If there's anything you need to take from this episode, is you need to get involved before it gets way worse.
Especially on the local levels, because that's where a lot of this stuff is being pushed through, is on the state level. It's on those county levels where they can try and sneak something in. A state legislator does not have a ton of time. A lot of these organizations will come in with a bill completely laid out and ready to go. And so all they have to do is bring it to the front. And right now in Minnesota, our House is blue, but our Senate's red. So, depending on where we want to go with that depends on who's feeling what.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Who's
It's
out
not a
voting,
fun place
yeah.
to be.
No. And we've seen this a lot of times. You see it happening right now as we speak. The school districts are taken over by the right. The parents associations, all these little things, they know that's where the power resides. We have a tendency to always focus on the presidential election or the federal level or the state level. No. It's at your local level where it happens. This is where it happens. And this is where the right understands. And this is where they're trying to take over. And they're successfully doing it at this point. Why? Because we can't be bothered, apparently, here on the left to get off our ass and actually do something about it. But we need to. We really, really, really need to.
Yes. All the way down the ballot on both sides.
Exactly.
That's right.
Judges
Yep.
is so important.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, well,
It's a little bit of work. You got to look up some stuff for judges, but it's worth it.
It's not that bad though. Like I've done it a few times. They usually have a website. There's usually at minimum a website where you can look up what are they campaigning about, and it's like, okay, are they going to say agree with everything? Probably not. Can I at least get 75%? Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for being on the show, and thank you for listening, and thank you to Professor Hodge for being our guest, and thank you to my co-hosts Sabrina, Brentley, and Hertzy, and even Benjamin, even though he's not here today.
Yep.
You can follow us at leftatthevalley.ca. You can send us an email at leftatthevalley@outlook.com. You can find us on Facebook on facebook.com/leftatthevalley.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us on Twitter at LATV Podcast. You can find us on YouTube.
At YouTube/Left at the Valley.
Perfect. What am I missing? Patreon.
Patreon.
You can go to patreon.com/LATV and become a patron and help us grow the show. Give us a 5-star review where you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show. Bradley, what do we got coming up there?
So come and check out Unapologetics panel stream on YouTube.
Yep.
And then also I'm doing these little streaming on Twitch. It's Skeptic Brentley if you want to watch that. So it's a lot of fun.
What games are you playing on Twitch?
Oh, I go through videos. I do.
Oh, just more video. Okay.
Yeah.
Just more reaction videos.
Reaction,
awesome.
Fantastic. Coming up, we'll have Tracy Harris and Jen Bell to be talking about their new show. They'll be coming next week. We have our old friend Bernard Laborel, who'll be coming back talking about his new book. And we're also talking with Andrew Seidel of the talking about law and atheism and all that coming down the pipe as well.
Nice.
So, we got some more fun stuff coming down.
We do.
Excellent. Anything else you need to add?
Have a great week.
Sounds good.
Don't get COVID.
Don't get COVID. Protect yourself.
Get vaccinated.
Hand sanitizer, wash. Use your masks.
Use your mask.
They all work, babe.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
See you next week.
Skeptic and non-believer, and